My name is Jordan Kauffman. I work with New Person Ministries. We do residential housing, transitional housing, and we have a place in Lancaster, a place in Reading, and primarily we're not exclusively working with people on the registry, but about 90 to 95% of the guys we house are. Yeah, we've been on that for 20 years, and yeah, through those connections.
Hi all, Jackie Fusco. I am the regional director for the Mid-Atlantic region for Center for Employment Opportunities. So we have a transitional program for individuals coming from incarceration, and we do not discriminate against truckers. So we believe that anyone who has the desire to work should be able to work. And so for that connection.
Excuse me, I'm Carrie Kurtz. I was the former director for Lancaster County Reentry Coalition, and I did a lot of work with referrals and hitting barriers and looking at ways to overcome and provide opportunities. So that's why I'm here.
So I'm Jennifer Weeks. I'm currently representing the treatment option. So I am the owner of an SOAB approved treatment program in Eastern PA, and try to advocate for good evidence-based treatment practices, which is why I think I'm here.
Who are you?
I am Lisa Kessler-Peters. I'm sure some of you have met me. I am the Hope Dealer of Pennsylvania. You're welcome to join me. We need as many people as possible. So that is what I will say about myself. My day-to-day, I work with the unhoused and people that are formerly incarcerated, justice impacted individuals, people with substance use disorder, and people with mental health on all parts of it and everything in between. I also am a person forced to register. I also am a person that has had to put somebody on the registry. So I am generationally impacted by this and see why justice reform or restorative justice specifically needs to be dealt with. It needs to be what we're using, because a lot of these things are generational, and it never stops happening until we break the cycle and start talking about the things that hurt us that we self-medicate with. So I'm going to start with some panel-wide discussion starters. You do not have to go down the line. You can, whoever feels compelled to answer it. If you would rather not answer any question that I ask the panel or individual, please say pass. First, I want to say, how much fun are we all having? Are we feeling inspired, empowered, encouraged, and ready to do something after we leave here? Yes. Okay. Because you guys will all be coming with us when we do our next lobbying, especially if you live in Pennsylvania. So we will be asking you and giving you the tools to be able to do some things about this. So this is not just us talking about what's happening. This is actually a way of us empowering people to do something about it. And as Rep. Kincaid talked about, educating our legislators is the most important thing that we have to do. And they are just human beings that put their pants on just like us. So it's so important that we acknowledge that they are just human beings and they need to hear our stories. So that will be what I have to say about that. And I think one of the most important questions that pops off this page for a starter is, how do you guys feel we balance public safety with the goal of giving individuals a second chance? I know that's a real easy one, right?
How do we, sorry, can you ask everyone, how do we balance what?
Public safety with the goal of giving individuals a second chance.
So I'll pop off from my end. Very frequently in the treatment provider realm, and maybe some of you have experienced this, when you get into treatment, you're just kind of slapped with certain restrictions, right? No matter what offense you committed or anything at all. And so I think at least in my treatment, where we are and how I try to balance that is to look at every person individually and say, what is this person's risk? And so how do we help them where they need to be helped? And actually look at the person and assess what their risk factors are and not just be like, okay, you can't do, here's this list of things, no matter what. So I think that's how we do that, at least how I like to do treatment.
I mean, I would also argue that second chances is helping public safety, right?
Yep.
Because when individuals come home from incarceration, regardless of charge, right? Providing them an opportunity to work and live and give back to their families, their communities. I mean, you're automatically helping public safety. Whereas if you don't do those things for individuals, you're impacting negatively public safety.
When I work with churches, I like to
Yeah.
tell them, they think, well, we can't have people here because of our kids. We have to make our church safe. And regardless of, even public safety, the way we're talking about, it's probably not how, most people, their perceptions that are wrong. But I will tell them in a one-on-one setting, generally, like when we take people and we isolate them, like you can have the goal, we're going to keep our church safe. And yeah, maybe not that abuse is happening in a church building on a Sunday morning anyway, very often, particularly those who have already committed offense, it's pretty much non-existent. However, like if your goal is to make that space safe and to do that, you keep people out. You're going to isolate those people. They're going to not live in community. At any time, no matter what your vice is, you are trying to deal with it by yourself. Even if you're a normal person, you're always going to be worse. You're always going to be worse off. So by taking those people and isolating them, you're actually making your building might be safer, maybe, but your community as a whole is much less.
Right. Yeah, I agree with everything that was said, and I think it boils down to educating people. I mean, the media portrays one thing, and so we form opinions based on like Law and Order or something like that, I was saying, and we lump people into like the worst thing that can happen. And I too have spoken with churches, employers, and coached like, hey, ask some questions, get to know them, find out their story, find out who they are like now. Don't just like hang out with a label. Yeah, the humanizing thing is really important.
All right, awesome. So how about if there was somebody that this was the very beginning of their journey, what is some advice that you might give to them about the reintegration process?
For me, it's always been connect with other people. Like you need a group of people that you can talk to, relate to, that can encourage you maybe further along in their healing journey. We kind of breed hope wherever we're at, right? So I can provide hope. Someone provides me hope. So yeah, community is really important. Even when it's so hard and like your inner voice is saying shame, no one wants you, all those lies we hear, it's super important to stay connected to community.
Yeah, I think so. At CEO, our organization, and I didn't talk about CEO, so maybe I should give like
Yeah, go ahead.
kind of what we do a little bit. So CEO is a national nonprofit organization who solely works with individuals coming home from incarceration. So I think it's still at this point, we're the largest national reentry org in 32 different cities across 12 different states. Here in Pennsylvania, we're located in Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, as well as Philadelphia. And I oversee all of our Pennsylvania sites currently. And so I think what we do is we provide individuals a job as soon as they come home. So folks can come in, we do a brief orientation to get them acclimated to the expectation of our program model. And then we immediately have them working on our transitional work crews while we're helping them find full-time employment, right? We want to get people immediate access to money. So there's less likely a chance to recidivate. We've got job coaches, job developers, retention services. I mean, we're a full wraparound employer and also program. And so I think one of the things that we're really doing when individuals come home is like not providing specific advice, but our services are very person-centered, right? So everybody's path and everything that they need when they come home is very individualized. And so while our focus is on work primarily, the barriers that come with folks coming home usually has nothing to do with work. And people want to work because they need to be able to support their families, but there's all these other things kind of happening, whether it be mental health, substance abuse issues, access to, food, clothing, whatever it might be. And so we're helping kind of reduce all of those barriers, connecting to resources. In our Philadelphia office, we've been fortunate enough to get funding to be able to provide free mental health services for every participant coming in. And so we're doing those kinds of things so that all of that can kind of be over here and we can work through that while we're helping them find work. And that's very individualized. Even the job development and what people want to do is very individualized. We don't just do kind of blanket job placement where we find an employer and then send 12 people there. We really take the time to figure out what people want to do and how to get them on a career pathway versus just getting them a job.
Love it.
I would echo Carrie and just say a focus on community. Yeah, like all the other stuff is important, but too many guys come back and they want to make up for lost time. I mean, we see guys who try to work multiple jobs and they have no support structure, no support system, and then they fail because of that. So yeah, all the other stuff's important, but we also just say focus on community as well.
So the first thing that popped into my head was like, just take a breath, right? Okay, and I think to go with you, it's everybody wants to do things very quickly, and my folks are on probation or parole, and it's like, look, we'll get there, like one step at a time, take a breath, we're moving in the right direction. It's frustrating, it's clearly not rational sometimes, but take a breath and we'll figure it out. So it's not concrete, but take a breath.
Some of you might deal with this one a little bit more than others. So people have strong feelings, to say the least, about people forced to register and the consequences of crime sexual in nature. How do you explain to people the type of advocacy or support that you choose to engage in?
Okay, so couple of avenues when I do this. I do a lot of teaching as well. So I'll teach law enforcement officers, probation, parole, and other therapists. And I often start out as saying, my job is to try to fight emotion with science. You can imagine what my track record is. It's not so great. So, that's really, I think, one of the ways to advocate. And then I have, some of you know me, a lot of you don't, I have soapboxes. And I really like to talk about how the United States is very good, in quotes, at what we'll call tertiary prevention, right? Once you have engaged in this behavior, then after the fact, we'll kind of be like, okay, let's give you some things to try to help you not do that again, versus even secondary or primary prevention, which is, I think, what John was just talking about, right? Like, we were talking about this morning is that my advocacy is, I'm there to help people at that tertiary level, but we need to be back it up, right? And be preventing child harm and preventing all of the traumas and things that we have that get us on this trajectory. So I don't know, we're okay at that third level prevention. We really need to work on the first level prevention, and that's my soapbox.
Well, I've worked with several county officials, also churches and stuff. And, of course, government is all about the safety, and that's how they get in office, right? Because they say we're going to make this real. And Lancaster County is no different. And just trying to educate them on what we've already heard this morning. Do you realize that by not providing housing, like Jordan was saying, the basic necessities, mental health care, you're setting them up to fail. Several people in Lancaster County get released after months past their release date with no housing, right? And I said, do you think they're safer for anybody, on the street? So it makes no sense to me but it hit me that everybody defines safety different depending on your role. So, government, lock them up, throw away the key, never going to change. It's the craziest thing. So yeah, you just kind of explain why you do what you do, and and the fact that their thinking isn't even rational. So,
That can be hard when people are not
yeah,
rational.
but you keep talking.
I think for
Yeah.
us, the advocacy, since we're workforce development, most of the time we're
Mhm.
advocating to employers. And honestly, the thing we try and stay away from is pulling on the heartstrings, because that's not really what employers care about, to be honest. And so I think
Mhm.
the thing of how we're advocating
Mhm.
is really to move quickly past charges,
Mhm.
whatever they are, and helping employers and people who own businesses
Mhm.
and everything else understand that we have
Mhm.
a whole workforce of
Skills.
Yeah.
individuals who are ready, willing, and able to work.
Mhm.
And you have a need,
Yeah.
and we're going to meet that need with individuals.
Mhm.
And so I think we really try to not focus on it,
Mhm.
and get employers really to understand like how it benefits them, how it ultimately then benefits their community.
I'd say we do focus on the stories. And yeah, whether it's talking to landlords, and you can go different ways with it, but talking to landlords, talking to churches, it's yeah, bringing as much as possible faces and stories
Yeah.
to numbers,
Mhm.
And kind of humanizing what has been dehumanized.
Awesome.
Okay, so this one isn't even on here.
Going
So,
rogue.
have you guys, outside of your work, family, friends, loved ones, other people you care about, given you grief or any type of pushback of why do you support them people?
Yes.
And how has that
Mhm.
been for you?
Mhm.
So it wasn't necessarily grief. I started in 2014, and my parents were in Lancaster County. They have an attached apartment on a farmhouse which sits in a 1/4 mile lane, so there's no neighbors. And it's not grief, but just my dad, I kind of brought up to him, was like, hey, would you consider having someone live in your apartment? Again, not near anything. And at the time he said, no. He said, I travel for work, and yeah, pretty sure he's not watching this Zoom. He said,
Love you, Dad.
I travel for work.
Mhm.
And when I'm gone, I don't want your mom getting raped. A year later, he invited a young man and the guy's girlfriend and his kid into his apartment. And they lived there for years. My dad's become a second parent to a guy who does not listen. And yeah, has pretty much, like adopted him. So it wasn't grief, but yeah, just kind of, it's all based on kind of ignorance, not knowing. And so, yeah, I've just watched my dad's an example, but individuals as they've kind of gotten to know it, it's almost like once you see something, you can't look away.
Yeah.
Once you know, you can't not.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had it from my children, my husband, even though he married me knowing, I'm remarried knowing that I'm in this role. And it's, I try to, again, humanize it. Like, these are people, and telling some stories, no names, obviously, but telling about some experiences. No one can lie. No one can deny our testimonies, right? So if being a voice for someone's testimony, bringing truth and reality to experiences, I've noticed with my son and my husband, who was supporting me being here too for 2 days, like they go from them, like, why are you working with them, to my son sending me a text last night, be safe, good luck. So it is like little steps of sharing truth, again, because there's so much ignorance, and it's not chosen. But again, like, media doesn't present reality.
So I'm totally get that, because I always say the book that I will write, who knows if I ever will, is going to be called Those People, because how can you work with those people? I get that. My family totally gets me, so I don't have it, but I've had some friends who would be like, you're at the office till 9 o'clock and you're by yourself? Like,
Yes.
are you, like, aren't you worried? Aren't you worried? And I'm like, worried about what? Because again, just the ignorance of the assumption, like, I'm not worried about anything, right? We're doing therapy, like, this is good. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I've been like super successful. Thinking about an argument I got in with my mom last week, but hopefully she's not watching this.
Love you, Mom.
I love you. Yeah, so I mean, I think the majority of my family, though, I think really respects the work that I do. I think they try not to think about the work that I do. So they like love that I'm helping humans, but don't want to know the details of what it means for me to be helping humans. And I think when they do get concerned, it comes from a place of safety. You know, and CEO at CEO, our evidence shows that we work best with the highest risk populations, right? So that means a lot of things. I'm based in our Philadelphia office, and we have a GVI program in Philadelphia, a group violence intervention program, where we're specifically working with individuals who are high risk for being a perpetrator or victim of gun violence. And so I think all of that comes into their brain, and they kind of freak out, but they have just stopped talking to me about it because I'm a very passionate person and I don't always approach that like the best way. So yeah, but I think they've just learned to respect it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that personal stuff. So we are going to talk a little bit about faith-based. So anybody can answer this. This is kind of going to be for Jordan, who is housing at a faith-based nonprofit. But I also just will quick say, as a person forced to register, I was so unsatisfied, and I know this is in a spiritual platform, but I know the Lord was so grieved by how people that are forced to register are treated, that I went and became a pastor. So that all people know that they are welcome, not only direct access to God, but they are welcome to be part of a community. And I really am just that rebellious that don't tell me I can't do anything, because that's exactly what I'm going to do. Not only will I attend the church, but I will be the leader of that church. So, and I go where the people are. So I go to the streets, I go to the prison, I go to wherever humans are, which is everywhere, to let them know that our mistakes do not define us, and that we are loved the same no matter what. So, so for your personal experience, for those that you work with, and then your opinion as the community in general, the faith-based community, how do you feel those on the registry are treated and are accepted?
Bad. So yeah, I've been there for 10 years, and I'd say the hopeful part here is that yeah, there's more acceptance, more caring from the faith community than when our founder, who I took over, when he started 20 years ago. So it's moving in a positive direction. That doesn't mean it moves fast, but it moves in that direction, sometimes in part because I think more and more, someone will go to their pastor and say, hey, I have a son, I have a niece, I have a friend. What do I do? And then, yeah, you can't really ignore it at that point. So I'd say as a program, what we do, like we have chaplains with a program who meet with the guys, but then a lot of our thing is, because we're trying to create community, is trying to work with churches to say, hey, where can these guys go when they're done here? We've had 768 guys in our program. We have 3 full-time staff between 2 locations. So a lot of them would come back to us because they have no family, they have no community. And while we appreciate that, we just can't be there for all of them. So as we've kind of spread out, yeah, I mean, some of there's a lot of conversations where there's a lot of openness to get that actual step to like, hey, now they can actually come here. And sometimes it's, hey, we need to help you guys write a safety plan. sometimes they don't understand that that actually means they have to have something written down. Or it's like, okay, well, that's work, and they're not saying no, but it's trying to actually get there. So yeah, sometimes it stops there. The churches we do work with, again, like they have safety plans, and I'll say where I go, our pastor has created a culture there. And they didn't have a lot of people beforehand who had sexual offenses before I started going there, but they were, I'd say my pastor he's always been geared toward the people in the margins. He's also my uncle, which helps, but small world, like County. But I mean, the church we work with in Reading, the church we work with mainly in Lancaster, we have 15 to 20 guys there on a Sunday morning. And if someone would bring up, hey, at least to the pastor in Lancaster, hey, I'm not comfortable with these people being here, his response would be, then you should probably find a different church, because this is our community. And it's beyond like we're welcoming people in. It's no, these people are integral to our community. It's not we're just serving them, it's they bring something, they add something. And that's kind of what we're trying to get churches to see more, with lower degrees of success. But I mean, yeah, it happens more and more.
Can I add something too? Because
Yeah, sure.
I am a believer, and I love the opportunity to talk to churches, and I like when they push back, because I think that gives us a platform to share. And so I talk about, what are we called to do to be the church? Are you walking that out? So as a believer to another believer, I can challenge a little bit, right? And just ask some questions. But, when you said community, I thought we have to remind the churches that, we're all a part of a community, right? We are the community. Inside the church, outside the church is planted in a community, right? You don't know the other neighbors around there, so why are you so worried about who's coming in your doors, right? And can you love them? That's what the church is called to do. So I've had the privilege of talking to churches and challenging their beliefs and stinky beliefs, but beliefs anyway, just to be curious, ask questions.
Awesome. And I just want to say, and I'm going to let you ask your question or comment. The pastor here, I let him know how grateful we are, because it was like a no-brainer for him, and he has wanted to be here all day. He has popped in and out throughout the day, but there have been a few crises that he had to go to, but he does plan on trying to attend tonight. And he really was kind of baffled that there's such a resistance for having this kind of platform and inviting all the community. But one of the things, because oftentimes people, especially in the professional or faith-based, if they're just meeting me and I haven't gotten to that point of sharing, they will let me know their biases and how they feel about certain things. And that's where I get to educate them. But one of the things that I will ask them very plainly is, where does it say that in the word? Because I need to, God only used mess ups.
Yeah.
And there's multiple people in the word that should have been on the registry if there was a registry back then. So go ahead.
My question was to Jordan Kauffman, New Person Ministries, is that a transitional?
Yeah. So guys live with us for 4 to 6 months, roughly. And yeah, we usually take them directly out of prison, state, county, and occasionally federal.
And is that a DLC contracted facility?
No, we raise our own support, which is probably the hardest job.
Yeah.
Jackie, I'm going to jump to you and talk about some of the employment stuff. So dealing with all people of many different criminal charges, how do you feel the barriers for those that are forced to register kind of differ? And how do you guys try to navigate that?
Yeah, I think, I would probably say that we get the same reaction for individuals forced to register and violent crime. They're probably the same exact, everybody, let me not say everybody, most employers have a bias to lean towards like, oh, okay, if there's like a drug charge, that's fine. Sometimes assault, they kind of have in their brain, these levels of like what's acceptable and what's not, right? And so often we have to educate employers on, well, so the charges that you're actually okay with actually have the highest possibility of
Yeah, right.
recidivating, right? So what you're trying to
fact,
get to,
right?
fun
Yeah,
fact,
right.
right? And so it really is a lot about education. Again, though, we really try and do a little bit of that and then really steer clear and try and talk to them about what their needs are. And the thing I think that's really great about CEO is because we do this transitional work, right? We immediately become a reference for a person. So most individuals have been working on our transitional work crew and working with our vocational teams for 2 to 3 months before they get placed, right? So we have a really good idea of who they are as people, how they're going to show up for work, what their personal traits, characteristics are, that are going to speak to employers. And we have that direct ability to be able to say like, no, this is what we see, like get rid of this image of what you have in your brain based on a charge. And I think for the most part, we're successful at being able to do that. Either we get a quick no and a hang up, or someone's willing to kind of hear us out and have the conversation. However, we do have some job developers who are really persistent. And even when we get the quick no and the hang up, they will continue to call and try, right? I think it's our job to really try and change the narrative to those who even have like a little glimmer that there might be some possibility of opening their minds a little bit there. And again, that's why we do start with like how we're going to meet your need, because once we build that relationship, so we don't just place individuals at an employer that we don't know. Our job developers have taken the time, built a relationship, have sent people there before, right? We've established a relationship. And so that also helps with building the trust within us first. And so when someone or that you trust is saying this person is trustworthy, it allows them to get their foot in the door, and then they have the opportunity to show up, right? And they do.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
What is a transitional work crew? What does it consist of? And are they paid? Who pays them?
Yep, happy to help. So the transitional work crews varies across all of our sites. And so basically we as CEO partners with either public or private sector partners to provide work. So let's see, in Philadelphia, we partner with City Parks and Recreation. We partner with, who else do we have down there? Harrisburg, we have the housing authorities. In Pittsburgh, we have a few private sector partners, M&T. Sorry, that's McConway and Torley. So it really varies across the state and across the site, but we contract with partners who allow us to bring individuals to their work site to work for the day. And so we have site supervisors, that's a CEO employee who is running the transitional work crews. And basically we go and we do whatever the work is. So at M&T in Pittsburgh, it's a like steel facility where we're doing, I don't even know what we're doing, honestly. We're doing a bunch of stuff with steel. The site director in the Pittsburgh office could tell you way better than I can. But yeah, so we pay them. So this partner pays CEO, and then we're the employer of record for every individual who comes to CEO. So God bless our payroll team. They run a daily payroll for 32 cities. And depending on the site, like our San Diego site, I think has like 15 crews, and there's 5 to 7 individual on each one of those transitional work crews. And so at the end of every day, they get money on their pay card. And that continues for as long as they work with us through the program.
So, and when they're doing that, they don't even have to do a criminal background because you're actually
Because
their
we're the employer of record.
Yeah.
So we're not background checking anybody.
Yeah.
Mhm.
can I add too? Sorry, I keep talking and all these things, but I've had my hands in all this too. With, in Lancaster, we did we did 6 employer roundtables. So we did a big one with all industries and we did 5 industry specific, and every one of the roundtables brought up people with sexual offenses. So that gave us a platform to be able to share. We call it untapped talent, right? If you have a criminal record, this is untapped talent, right? You have a need, we have an opportunity to fix a need. But after we did that, we also realized that with, we have business service reps and we have career navigators. Business service reps, like you mentioned, work with the employers, and career navigators work with the individual. And we realized that we need to educate them on how to advocate, because we teach the person who needs a job, we talk to the employers, but we had this group in between that when we met with them, they were just using the wrong language, like, and reaching out to employers saying, do you hire sex offenders? Oh, Lord, so we were like, let's find a different way to ask the question, right? And please don't use sex offenders. So we talked a lot about language that you use. You're building a perception of a person as you're talking to an employer, and you also are building a perception in your mind of this person. So you have to get it if you're going to be able to help the employer get the right people. So.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I had a question.
Sure.
The Center for, now, are you a Pennsylvania DOC contract?
Yes. Send a BCC referral, we got
She
you.
is.
So, first of all, the work you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But my question, so there's lots of different people that are on the registry or have been on the registry. And a lot of people that I've met have had advanced degrees and are significantly under.
Right.
Yes,
And
yes.
that goes on forever. So like, what type of, like, for someone who's looking to get a leadership position or to go and do something, the stigma's there. I mean, I'm gonna give a real example. Like, I was with an employer for 12 years.
Yep.
Just recently left. Now I'm in the market again.
Okay.
Went for a job interview as a CFO somewhere, and I'm the 3rd round. And I have, and my background's been, my record's been expunged. And they said, well, because of your background, we're not gonna move forward. So how do you work with people to get them to not just get a job, but to have a career,
Yes.
to move forward and move on?
So I think that, so 2 things, right? And individuals like yourself, right? So we don't get super often, only because sometimes you have to do the transitional work portion part of our program, right? But that being said, I have mentioned before about how we do very specific directed job search for individuals. We are not trying to find, so if someone comes in with an advanced degree, I remember we had an individual come home from state incarceration, and he had some sort of degree in like solar panel installation, something or other. And we were like, oh, okay. So let's figure out this, right? Let's build a relationship with an employer who's looking for a solar panel installer, right? So we're doing, if someone already comes in with a degree, we're doing very specific searching for that person, right? And then I think the other way in which we're doing that is that, for a very long time at CEO, our focus was immediate access to money, right? So that folks didn't recidivate. And over time that has shifted. We now have a whole team who is really working on advanced training. And so some of those advanced training, what we do is we kind of figure out the hot markets in the city that we're in that are most open to individuals who are justice impacted, right? And then provide the training to get them the degrees in those things. So we have an IT advanced pathway, we have a CDL advanced pathway, construction advanced pathway. And I'm sure in different other localities, there's other ones that are specific to that area, right? And those are costs covered by CEO. Of course, we try and find funding to support. But if you take CDL, for example, that's what, $7,000 that the individual does not have to pay. They remain a part of our program. And then after they figure out this, after they get the CDL, we then help them find a job, with their new CDL. And so we're constantly looking for ways, because we don't want to just get people
Yep.
jobs, right? We want to get them careers. Sometimes we need to have conversations about the realistic nature of a career a person's interested in, right? But like, what drives you to be in that field? Let's just, I'll do a blanket one, right? The medical field. A lot of people can't get into the medical field any longer because of a felony conviction. But like, what is the thing that's driving you to be in that field? And how do we find a career pathway for you that gives you that same level of motivation and interest that actually is going to work with a background that you have?
And I would say specifically, so we had a guy one time who had some sort of tech degree to the point of like, I don't even know how to describe it. But he couldn't get a job. No one wanted to put him on their payroll. And right before he was gonna give up and just do a very blue collar thing, he actually set himself up as a contractor. And then his companies immediately hired him. Because at that point, he's a contractor, not on their payroll. His only downside is that he only made $125,000.
Shucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, consultation work, and like consulting and any, being your own contractor. For me, as somebody that had multiple degrees, prior to incarceration, and then only being able to be a server, which being a server is super cool. We get paid $2.83 an hour. That was really difficult to swallow. From there, for me to be able to get back in a place of not only leadership, but leadership specifically in social work, was something that I thought was going to be impossible. But what I started doing is volunteering, and during the volunteering, networking with like-minded people that had access to other people, that would introduce me to the decision-making people. And so for the last 2 employers that I have had, one thing that I applied for myself, and I teach to those that I serve, is get in where you can. So I usually have taken one of the lowest level positions. I'm like, whatever you have open, that's what I'll take. I'm so overqualified, but I will serve, and I will work that position as if I own that business with integrity, and with dedication, because, and I always tell my employer, I know the risk you're taking in hiring me. And the good news is we are some of the best workers because we know the risk that people are taking to hire us, not because we're going to commit a crime, but because we know the flack that they may get for hiring somebody. In both of those positions, I, without even asking, have been moved into leadership just by showing my character, and how much compassion and care that I have for those that we serve. So there is getting in those places where people see your value and then making the ask. And where I currently am, like at one point we did even have to get legal involved just to make sure not only are they protected, but I'm protected. And that's the one point when you were speaking about the safety plans. I know for some people that is like hard, whether it be for church or being able to see family or anything of like, but I'm not a danger. Why do I have to come up with a safety plan? And the way you can shift the perspective on that is it's actually just as much for your protection. So regardless of the stupidity and all of that, that being in place, actually, if somebody would say somebody did or that you did something when it didn't happen, because you have that process in place, it actually protects you from being charged with something else or having law enforcement called on you.
Can I also just plug CEO real quick? I know I'm here to represent them. CEO really wants to practice what we preach, right? So our 95% of our staff in the Philadelphia office is justice impacted. I think across the organization, it's something like 50% of staff. I do think we need more justice impact individuals at leadership levels, right? But CEO truly, I mean, we do not run background checks, and that's at every level of the organization. I think the only one we do is a site supervisor. We do like a motor vehicle check. Had to get my brain together for that one. So truly, I think for individuals who are impacted by the justice system, look at CEO's website. Like I said, we're in 32 cities, 12 states. The only time you have to be in a location is if you're doing frontline direct work. But anything that is, you know, more like a central team or a little bit more removed from the direct work, they do remote.
Expect some phone calls.
We talked a lot about the importance of community, and I know as a PFR myself, something that has been super helpful are people like this in PARSOL and getting to talk with people who've been through the same things, right? But a lot of probation officers, some treatment providers don't allow you to associate with people with the criminal background or a sexual offense. And I have a very dear friend who's unfortunately going through this, which just leads to isolation, you know, not allowed to talk to people outside of treatment or go to the church that he was at before this all happened. And I know this is very broad, but what do we do? That sucks,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it's just, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give you an anecdote for that, because the what do we do just made me think of it. I have my Plymouth meeting guys a while ago, they had just made themselves a family. They were, you know, forced to go to group and all that. They made themselves a family. They'd go to somebody, you know, somebody's house for Thanksgiving. Everybody was on board. And then a new supervised release officer came in and was like, squashed it. It was like the best thing for this crew of guys. It was fantastic. And then we'd have these phone conversations and he'd be like, well, they're isolated and they're not doing this and they're not doing that. And he'd be like, what are we gonna do, Doc? And am I being recorded? I was just like, you just took away the thing.
Yeah.
That was good. So, from treatment providers and like with the safety planning and things, I don't think we're the ultimate say, right? So we work with a ton of different counties. There's some counties that a client says, hey, I want to do this. And I'm like, don't even bother. Because I know they're going to squash it. Most of the time we'll be like, okay, let's safety plan it. Let's bring it to them and let's see what they say. But it is very complicated, right? How do you get people to connect and to have community when you're not allowed to be around others? And then we put folks in group, and if it's a good group, they're connecting, right? They're supporting each other. Well, don't talk to each other outside of group. Don't have a text message, don't have a phone call. So what do we do, Doc? I don't know. I don't have a solution. I have some like empathy.
I think one of the things that we try, I see your hand up.
That might be a generic blanket, condition. And one thing about the conditions of parole or supervision, they can be amended. You could work with your treatment provider along with your agent to request a special exception, but what the agent has to do is to actually write a report to ask for that condition to be changed. So it is a process, but it can happen. And I've worked with individuals who had that removed or through their treatment providers to reestablish family reunification.
Yes.
Or if they had jobs that allowed the employer was okay with them returning to that job, even though there is a victim-related person working through the ODA office and your agent and treatment provider, those exceptions can be changed and they can be given a special condition to allow.
That's what I'll always kind of advocate for my folks to be, well, like ask, right? So give me the fuel to advocate for you, right? And then advocate for yourself. And do we have those meetings with probation or do we have a meeting with a supervisor? But if you give me the fuel to go to bat for you, I'll do it. And the worst thing they say is no, but we tried.
It does require a recommendation from a treatment provider, a professional staff that can make that decision.
But you can advocate for yourself. We just can't control the outcome.
Yes, I was gonna say, I think that the best way that we try and work with those scenarios is to build relationships with probation and parole. We have a lot of different parole officers that we work with. And I think one of the best things that we have done is just like allow them to trust us and know that if we're coming to you with a recommendation, we're not a treatment provider, so we're not going to be able to, right? But we can absolutely speak to some of the things that are in place that are hindering a person's ability to move forward. And sometimes they're big things and sometimes they're small things, right? Like they were supposed to come to work today, but you called them on the phone and said they needed to come meet you right now. And like, they're supposed to be at work, right? and working on like setting a consistent time. But I think
You get that too.
if you build the relationship and help the individual build a relationship, I think that just helps all around.
Yeah, I think one of the tricky parts is that the reality is individuals in certain places, they can kind of do what they want. And like when we started the church we work at in Lancaster, I wrote a safety plan. And before we actually like started, I took it to, at the time, the two approved groups, the county parole and state parole, and they all said, sure. No one like wanted to put their name on it, but they're all like, sure. Then, and we had a new parole officer, state parole officer come in, and he was like, oh no, this doesn't work. And I was like, well, can I talk to your boss? He's like, absolutely. He just didn't want his name on it. A couple more, like, again, the boss required one more signature from us, and that was fine. But that's just kind of the reality. So I would say the other thing your friend can do is pray that the Lord provides employment for that person somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And just on that, I just want to encourage people, like, always ask, never assume. I was told, like a year and a half, maybe 2 years of being out, still having like 4 years left on probation. I received a lump sum of money and I wanted to take my kids on a cruise. And everybody was like, absolutely not. And I'm like, is that written somewhere that I can't do that? So I went to probation and I pleaded my case, and then I went to my treatment provider and I pleaded my case, and I got a recommendation, and I had lots of signatures, and I went on a 10-day cruise to 4 different islands with my 3 children that were all minors, and we had the very best time, even though I was told, no, you cannot do that. So don't accept anything as stone unless it's legal law that says do not do this. Yeah.
Advocate.
So we have about, I think, 6 minutes left.
5 minutes.
We have 5 minutes left. We have touched on so much of this that has been super amazing. Did you have a question? Okay, let me let you ask your question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for all the work that the panel is doing up there. That's fantastic. How do people find you? How do the people that need you find you? A dozen years ago, I couldn't find anyone. I couldn't get any help.
So
For
sorry.
the situation we found ourselves in. How do people find you?
I would say that for us, the majority of our referrals come from probation and parole, because it's we mostly serve individuals who are recently released. That does not mean that we won't serve individuals who were released years ago. I think typically it's usually within like 3 to 4 years, but I would say other than probation or parole, it's like word of mouth, right? Me coming and doing events like this. We have at every one of our locations, the person who teaches our orientation or pathways to employment, we call it, is also an outreach person. And so we're going out in the community and letting people know who we are. Participants of our program are always referring to family and friends and things like that. And so I think what we try and do is just like immerse ourselves in the community so that people know who we are.
Yeah, I was going to say networking. In Lancaster, like my name was on our website. I made connections definitely with Jordan, was a close partner, the jail, probation, parole, mental health, substance use. Definitely, like one of the things that I have focused a lot on are people with autism, IDD, brain injury. Jordan knows we've tried to work with people on the spectrum, but building those connections and then getting at least a phone call that says, hey, Carrie, do you know who can help us with this? So like, I've always felt like I was a conduit, like, hey, let me connect you to so-and-so, or let's see if we can get you connected to new persons. So you really have to get your name out there, meet people.
I find that, like he went through, we went through a year of waiting for the trial and had a lawyer and continually asked and begged, you know,
Yeah.
where do we go? Who
Right.
can help?
Yeah.
Who, you know,
Mhm.
there must be agencies out there.
Yeah.
And I know that the lawyers are
Yeah.
So that, I mean,
properly informed.
a lot of that, because we do a lot of work with folks pre-trial as well, and we get, most of those are attorney referrals. And that's just, initially was me putting my face in front of them and doing free continuing education programs for, give them, you gotta feed them, give them lunch, teach them something, give them a CEU. But then once they know you're out there, then it's really word of mouth,
Yeah.
right? So it's,
Yeah.
and with the attorneys, those of us who do like the
Mhm.
pretrial work, because the process of getting there is traumatizing, right? And for the family and all of that stuff. It is unfortunately a word of mouth
Yeah.
thing.
And I would suggest searching for reentry coalitions,
Mhm.
like
Yes.
definitely in PA,
Mhm.
right? Because they can at least, if there's a coordinator or something, they can at least work on getting you connected to the right resources.
Yeah, I was
And-
gonna say, find the
Mhm.
closest coalition.
Yeah.
About half of the counties in our state have
Mhm.
them now, and then also PARSOL or whatever state you're in. And even using the national website. Obviously, that's gonna be a little
Mhm.
bit more broad,
Mhm.
but those are ways to at least get connected with people that know where to find the resources specifically that you're looking for.
Across the United States are actually connected on the national level, like. you
That would
know,
be a question for Brenda, maybe.
Connected in what way?
Well, I mean, you know, that you're helping, or that, you know, because I don't know what the numbers are. I have no idea, but you know, I would think it's probably a very small.
We are a niche crew.
Yeah. Mhm.
That they don't know
And
that
I
you're out there.
apologize, but be prepared for barrage of calls to your Philadelphia office.
Right there.
No worries.
Yeah,
Right, that's my, yeah.
Parcel is in the process of trying to bring together all these resources and put them into one large database in
Great.
Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
The thing is that we need volunteers who are willing to spend hours of going through these organizations,
Data.
putting that information together. And we have a website that is currently under development in its beta, but we need people who are willing to spend the time of getting that information together, verifying those organizations, and and putting it into the database. So then,
Yeah.
and then once we get it in there, it's letting you guys know
Yeah,
that, hey,
yeah.
this is out, but we need the volunteers to be able to help us with it.
I recommend interns.
Interns.
We had interns actually create, we call it a reentry resource guide on our website. So interns are great.
Awesome.
Yeah, so all of us are free staff, so you're welcome to join our free staff.
Yeah, right.
I won't even do a background check.
Yeah, yeah.
My IT
Hey.
guy
And
used
we
to
all,
have that.
and we all and we understand that even our volunteers,
Mhm.
even members who contact us and volunteer, we understand that you guys have your own lives, that you have your own jobs. We have our own jobs that we do as well.
Yeah.
And there's that passion that you need to have that fuels you.
So we're gonna break quickly.